right, Roza, are you ready for our first podcast?
Ready. Yeah.
This is our first podcast for me, definitely it's my first podcast. For you, you have recording experience though, correct?
I have recording experience, but it's all scripted, so, well, mostly scripted.
Even that stuff you did in Japan, or I guess that stuff you did in Japan, that was scripted?
Right now, you mean?
I remember seeing pictures of you, like, in a studio on, like, radio or something like that, and, like...
Yeah. So, well, most of it is scripted, but I do put in, like, some ad-lib stuff to, keep it spicy.
Spicy. Is that written stuff? Was that, like a radio play or something like that? Or was it, like, the fishing thing? You did, like, a fishing show or something, right?
Oh.
That was for video. But you also did like a radio fishing thing. Am I wrong?
No, right. You were wrong.
I'm always wrong. But
but yeah, no. I think I've been on the radio maybe like once or twice.
Really, I have like the impression you've been on like regularly, like weekly or something.
Well, for the English program, yes, but like free talk. Like, talk about whatever I want is, just once, I think.
Okay, really? I guess that one picture went a long way with me anyway. So we should just get into it then and talk about what we want to do for this podcast. We should get into what qualifies us two foreigners, at least from the outside, looking in. What qualifies us to talk about Japan, let alone, anything, let alone Japan.
Anything.
Yeah.
Well, how about we start with you?
We start. Oh wow! You threw me for a loop. I was going to start with you, since you're clearly the most interesting out of the two of us. But okay, I'll go first. My name is Kiyoshi Parker. For those of you who care about last names, I am born and raised in Los Angeles, California. I am half black and half Japanese. So my grandmother was from Okinawa. She is no longer with us. My grandfather was from Hawaii, but his family has roots in Okinawa. And so at a young age, I thought, okay, I'm half Japanese. I watch anime. My grandmother's Japanese. I got to learn this language somehow. And nobody around me could speak Japanese. My mother could not speak it. My auntie, her sister, of course, could not speak it. So I thought, okay. And my grandmother was in no position to teach me. So I thought, all right.
By the way, this is all new information for me too.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
We've known each other for like so many years, but
I feel like 10 years or something like that. But
yeah, but I've never heard like your.
People don't really go into like the backstories. If you think about it, like even really close friends rarely go into like their stories, like at any time, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just me. But anyway, so I was like, okay,
so
I want to learn Japanese. Nobody around me speaks it. My grandmother is, she's in no position to teach me how to speak Japanese. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this myself. I like anime, so I picked up a dictionary and just started like reading dictionary things, and like I would learn words like takushi and stuff like that.
Really?
And, yeah, like dictionaries don't really go in depth into teaching you, so it's just words and stuff like that. So eventually I get out of high school. I around 19, the age of 19, I go to a free language exchange class thing in Little Tokyo in downtown Los Angeles, and I buy a couple of books, and then my routine was first go home, read these books, get these phrases, and then go down to that language exchange and try it out on all the Japanese people I find there. So I'm saying stuff like, ikitai desu, is that how you say it? Is that how you say it? And I would ask them, is this right? Is this right? Ikanakia ikenai no? Is that right? Is that the right way to say it? And they would be like, okay, yeah, that's cool. So basically, that's how I started to pick up the language. And then after that, it was a lot of TV, a lot of Japanese variety shows, a lot of comedy. So a lot of my friends would comment to me like, "You sound like you're a comedian or something like that. The way your cadence is." It's like that's because I watch a lot of Japanese comedy, and so I just comedy, variety shows, anime, and all those, and then I made a bunch of friends, and so I just practiced with them, and then that's how I sort of was able to teach myself Japanese. I went to schooling for it, sort of in like Santa Monica College, and a little bit in Japan, but most of it was all by myself. So
that's really amazing. So I'm Roza Akino, and I've lived in Japan for the past 10 years or so, and I work in entertainment and in various I do all the work. All the different works.
All the different works.
But yeah, mainly entertainment, sometimes translation, interpretation, modeling, and voice work as well. So yeah, that's me. I like my story is a lot different, but there is some similarity in the aspect of like, so I started learning Japanese first in high school, and then it was my major in college. But like it was kind of the same thing where like, because you won't get to like a really high level of fluency just from college classes, even if it's your major.
Not at all. You must put it into practice.
Yeah. So like I was doing the same thing that you did, which was like meticulously like asking like what does that mean? What does this mean? Is this the right way to say it? Is that like just
there's
like,
a lot of annoying other people
sure
that goes into it.
Yeah. Hey, you got to do what you got to do. But yeah,
so what was your
really amazing though?
What was your kikkake? What got you into?
So
like, for those of you who don't know, kikkake means sort of, how would you translate like kikkake? Like the catalyst. There, that's the word I'm looking for. Catalyst that got you into like. Even though it's not translated that way, and like if you looked it up in the dictionary, I don't think it would be like catalyst. But the thing that got you like, yeah, I want to learn this language that I don't know.
So for me,
especially for you, like I have a Japanese background, but you do not.
Yeah, so since the people listening probably don't know what we look like, I have no Japanese blood in me. I was born in the Republic of Georgia, the country, not the state.
Not the state.
And but I moved to the United States when I was really young, and so I grew up in California. And but so I started out with multiple languages since I was a baby, because my dad and my mom spoke like several languages, and so I grew up in the States, and I did really like languages in general and culture, learning about various cultures. And so I think there's a thing where like if you know more than one language from like a really young age, it's easier to process learning new languages afterwards.
Okay, you're a polyglot, so, I believe they call.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but like it is easier to like pick up and study languages, I think. And so I started out with what was it? I started out with French. Did really bad. Then I took Spanish in high school for my regular credits, and then I was starting to get into martial arts with Taekwondo, and so I
martial arts.
Tried, wow. Yeah, so that was my thing, is like cultural stuff. So but then when I'd start learning something, I would want to learn more about the language too. So then I tried learning Korean and eventually Chinese. None of it really like I like languages, but like none of them really like stuck.
Gotcha.
But when eventually I started practicing Aikido,
there we go.
Okay, there we go. I decided, okay, let me try learning Japanese. And that was like, I just got it. It was like, it fit, you know? Like I didn't really have to work too hard at trying to grab. Like I mean, you do have to do the work, but it doesn't feel like work because it's just so enjoyable for you.
Yeah.
And so when I started learning the language, that's when I was like, okay, I'm falling down the rabbit hole. So
once you start, you can't stop.
Yeah, exactly. So like once I find something that I'm really into, it's kind of like there's no in between. It's either 0 or nothing. So I'm sorry. There's no in between.
It's 0 or nothing.
0 or 100.
Gotcha.
That would be bad. It's either
it's
0
0 or it's absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like it wasn't like anime or anything like that. It was basically through the just learning martial arts or like a cultural thing, and then you're like, I'm going to learn the language of this cultural thing I'm learning, and then you just trial and error. You just went through a Korean, Chinese, and then landed on Japanese, and that one was the one that got in your brain.
Yeah, and so then when I went to college, I was like, okay, I will make Japanese language my major because I really enjoy the language, and like, you know, translation and interpretation is a really great skill to have. So I was like, okay,
definitely.
My major. And like, so like you, like I made an environment where I would just be surrounded by Japanese language, so I'd have to use it. And
I'd have
to just
that's paramount.
Get used to it, and like it's so difficult in the beginning because you don't know, you know, right from left, but kind of getting past that first bump, I think, is the real hard part with languages.
Yeah, if anybody's listening to this who's learning, I guess, any language, but you know, specifically Japanese, because this is a podcast about Japan. You must. I don't know how you're gonna do it if you're like living in like rural Alabama, but you gotta make some Japanese friends, and you gotta use that
immersion.
shit.
Yeah.
Immersion. I don't know if I would go immersion. I don't know if that's necessary.
Well, in the sense of like your environment, like not necessarily like you don't have to go to Japan, but like
no.
You do need to create like your surroundings. You're listening to Japanese movies or
I would agree
all day long, right?
I would agree.
So
I listen to a lot of Japanese music starting from high school.
Yeah.
Like early high school too. So I've been into this culture for like 25 years or something like that. So even people in rural Alabama could, you know, pick up or especially now could just go on YouTube and find some or Spotify and find a lot of Japanese artists. Find a music you like, watch some anime. It's not the best way, I would say. Like the news is not great to learn from, especially if you're just starting out. And anime, you'll start speaking like an anime character if you like just watch anime and
very important distinction to make.
Very important. So I think the best thing if you're gonna watch something, I think it's hard to come across. I think kinda, but variety shows are the way to go. I mean, at first they're going to speak really fast and you're not going to understand anything. But that's the best way to hear sort of natural speaking.
Well, what about dramas?
Dramas scripted. And I feel like Japanese dramas especially feel like they sound like they're really scripted. As opposed to, and I don't speak Korean, but when I watch a Korean movie or a Korean TV show, I feel like they are speaking naturally. They sound like the people I hear in like Korean restaurants. When I hang out in Koreatown, go to a Korean restaurant, and I hear people talking. That's how they sound like on TV and movies. Whereas Japanese dramas, they feel like they're reading off of a page, and they're like it's like very broad
very
the way they act,
overacting, right?
Yeah,
like,
a little bit.
It's what do you call it? Like, you can guess the type of like expressions and reactions the characters are going to make because they're so kind of cliche.
Yeah. I'm not dissing on Japanese dramas or anything like that, but it's just like I don't think that's the thing to watch if you're gonna watch something to learn the language. I feel like you gotta watch, and now you can watch like Japanese YouTubers or whatever. But variety shows helped me, I think, the most, aside from making friends and speaking to them. I think variety shows is the thing that got me like, there in my experience.
I think like basically the best thing to do is to expose yourself to a variety.
Variety, yeah.
A variety of
not just comedy
sources.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, because then you can kind of get a well-rounded exposure to like the different ways of talking and different vocabulary or like.
Oh, it's very good for listening experience, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. I think we should mention why we decided to. Well, going back to our introduction and why we decided to do this.
Introduction. Let me stop you right there. Introduction. Yes. So I think my thing for this this podcast is to pick like a word of the day or the word of the podcast, and then not speak on it, but that would be like
use it as a theme.
Overarching theme. Exactly. Yeah. So the word of the Japanese word of this podcast, our very first podcast, should be Jiko Shoukai, which means which means self-introduction. Exactly. Yeah. So remember that, kids. The theme of this podcast is Jiko Shoukai, your first Japanese word from two people who are not, aesthetically Japanese.
I do think that as people who were not born in Japan, but we do have kind of unique experiences and perspectives that I think we can offer.
Oh yeah.
Like I think for me, because I've been involved with the cultural aspect, various aspects of Japanese traditional culture, like tea, kimono, traditional hairstyles, antiques, craftsmanship, all of that. That's kind of like my area of expertise. So
I would say so. Out of all my friends, you are the one person who does like the most Japanesey stuff. All the things that you think of when you think of Japan, the tea ceremonies and walking around in kimonos and the hongami, the Japanese hairstyles, you do all of I think they're like all of that. You do all of it, especially out of anybody I know. I mean, there's some people who do like one thing. They would have tried out a Japanese tea ceremony here and there, but you're like the one that like tried to be an expert in like I feel like nearly everything.
I mean, it's a good thing. I do like all the things that I do are they are all on the traditional side though. So I really don't know a lot about like, for example, pop culture or anime or music, anything like that. So I feel like you probably know a lot more about that side, the more modern side of Japan. Right?
Yeah. And you're the most traditional, and therefore we come together, and we are a perfect balance of Japanese.
That's right.
Japanese cultures from people who aren't, again, aesthetically Japanese.
When I was in college, I got the opportunity to go to Kyoto for a year and study traditional tea ceremony, and so that was a really, really special experience because it was 1 year of just studying tea every day, all day.
1 year.
1 year.
Wow.
There's like a trade school for tea ceremony, and
really, that I did not know.
Yeah. So I don't know if trade school is correct, right? Senmongakko.
Yeah.
So specialty school, trade school for tea ceremony. And, usually...
Wait, Senmongakko, a specialty school, specifically for tea ceremony? Like that's the only thing they
right.
teach there?
That's the only thing.
Okay.
But the thing with tea is, though, it is a really great way to get like an overall introduction almost to traditional Japanese culture, because it is so connected to the various aspects of Japanese culture. Like, of course, the seasonality, kimono, traditional food, kaiseki. You also have the scrolls, the kakejuku, that you hang in the tokonoma, the alcove.
Okay.
And then you have all the craftsmanship, the pottery, the calligraphy. Like everything is connected to tea. So if you're interested in Japanese culture and you want to learn more, tea is actually a really, really good entryway to kind of experience it all. Yeah. I
don't know why. But I guess because I started with anime, I never thought to like go into. I don't know. There's a little bit of a like. It kind of annoys me when I see like some foreigners like try to get into like not you. I'm not saying you, but like who try to get into like the traditional stuff and annoying is not the word I'm looking for. It's more like maybe it's just me and I came in through like the modern, like I said, variety shows and anime and stuff like that. So I just didn't have the start. So I never really got into any of the like traditional things. And it's, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like...
What do you think bothers you about it?
Nothing bothers me about it. It's not about bothering me. It's just like... I think I saw too many people just like treat Japan as like, oh yeah, like archery and like tea and karate and stuff like that. But now it's becoming, it's going the other way. It's like everybody's getting into it through anime and Japan's fucking weird and porn and like it's like, well now we got to go back to tea ceremonies and this is getting out of hand. But no, it's very interesting.
So I went from. Well, like, so tea, you do have to wear kimono. At least at the school, you had to wear kimono every day for class. Because, that was just part of the uniform. It's not like... Yeah. Like, it's kind of interesting starting out from that angle, you know what I mean? Because it's...
Yeah.
Especially nowadays, kimono is seen as just kind of like a special thing you wear, which of course it can be, but it's not necessarily restricted to that. Like, at one time, kimono was the thing that was worn as everyday wear, and not just special occasions. And so I think the way that I came into it, I came in with that kind of mindset where like kimono is just like, it's the thing I wear every day for class. And
was it something you purchased at the school, or did you have to bring in your own kimono?
So we were actually given a set by the grandmaster, but you do need different kimono for like different seasons, and like if you're wearing them every day and kind of sliding on the tatami mats, then it can get worn down like around the knee area.
Okay.
So right. you do need your own like kind of practice kimono, but they are actually really, really affordable to buy used, and there's actually a lot of used kimono for sale, and especially if it's simple, you can find them for very cheap. So I bought some of my own, and yeah, that was kind of like, that was when I feel like my life changed the most. Like my whole direction kind of changed, because
doing the tea ceremony.
Yeah, the year in Kyoto, because it's such a different mindset, approach to things, that like, in a good way. I mean, so once I experienced that, like there were a lot of things that I had changed my way of thinking about. So that was kind of like, that was the like the biggest catalyst that just set off this explosion into the universe of
Japan.
Getting Japan and, becoming fully like diving into the, the world of traditional culture.
Very interesting. Tea is the perfect doorway, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you want to learn about traditional cultural aspects.
There's a YouTuber I watched recently. He's like he and his wife are like professional tea ceremony people, whatever you call you guys, and they're like critiquing a tea ceremony from the movie Karate Kid Part 2, and they're just going through about like you can imagine
that's not even a ceremony.
It wasn't well. In the movie's defense, the scene was not like a traditional, like a professional setting. It was just the Japanese girlfriend was teaching Daniel-san how to do tea, and they were critiquing each part of the tea ceremony, where you put your hand and you got to put your sleeve this way and that way, and they're doing this wrong, and it's just very very interesting. See how meticulous a tea ceremony. And also, apparently, there's like different styles, right, from like different parts of Japan
different
or whatever.
Schools, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so there are actually quite a few different schools. There are like major ones and minor ones, but the movements and the utensils can vary quite a bit from school to school. But I think, like, of course, there's different procedures that are made for different times of the year, or for using certain utensils. There's so many different, we call it otemae. So, like, the procedure you go to prepare the tea. But the whole kind of, it's important not to forget, like, the whole point of it as well, though, because the whole point of it is to prepare a bowl of tea from your heart that your guest will enjoy. Okay. And so I think sometimes things get lost in the what's the word?
In English or Japanese?
Either one. Almost like bureaucracy, but not exactly. But like lost, like things get, the essence can sometimes get lost in all of the things that are supposed to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's important to keep that in mind as well. But again, going back to the criticizing, tea scenes in the movies, there's sometimes you see things like, no, don't pick that up that way, or like, don't wear a ring with, like, it's hitting the ball.
Yeah, it was stuff like that. It was stuff like that. Yeah. She's wearing a wristband. She wouldn't do that if she were like actually in an actual tea ceremony.
But yeah, those can be fun to watch though, just for a laugh.
Oh yeah, definitely. Let's get into how we met each other. Do you remember how we met?
Yeah. So I think it was some. So I was in LA I ended up finishing college in LA, and I was involved in like the Japan Film Society group, or the Japanese group of film-related people or students, right?
Do you remember what the name of that school was?
No.
I know it took place at some place called like Aoi Language School for like Japanese people who came here to learn English. Yeah, it was a language school in like the afternoon, and it became like a film school at night or something like that.
Oh yeah.
But I forgot the name of the film school part.
Was it? I think it was in Torrance, right? Wasn't it?
It was indeed in Torrance, yes.
Okay. So we met at one of the events, I think, was it?
I think there was a screening, and afterwards we went. After the screening, we went back to the offices. I want to say. And then you were the anomaly. You were the like.
And I was bleach blonde at the time too.
You were
right?
bleach blonde, yeah,
like
yeah. You look nothing like that right now, but you were blonde. You had short hair, so you stood out.
Yep.
Blonde, spoke Japanese perfectly, and everybody was sort of like crowded around you, or at least that's the impression I got, was that everybody. Well, it was a lot of guys there, Japanese guys are, and they sort of like, oh my God. She's not Japanese, but her Japanese is perfect.
But she's blonde.
She's blonde. Oh my God. And so, all the attention was on you, I think.
Of course.
Of course, yeah. We talked, but we didn't talk a lot. Like, I remember sitting next to you and I think the guy's name was Taka. He was like,
oh yeah.
And like some other person. And then like, they were talking to you and we were asking you questions because, of course, we wanted to get to know this like anomaly. And then, I guess, and then at the end we just all exchanged like Facebooks or something like that. But nothing about you I didn't think anything like, one of these days I'm going to become really good friends with this girl. Because you seem sort of not aloof. I don't want to use the word aloof. That's like a negative connotation with that word. But I guess you were overwhelmed, maybe? I don't know if you remember how you felt that day. But
I think, I don't know if like this is the place to get into it now. But
sure.
Because I think, and we've talked recently about, various things that we are or have been going through, right?
Yeah.
And I've also done like a lot of trying to understand like how my brain works and, various motivations and,
yeah,
how certain actions come about. So for me, I'm actually very, you probably wouldn't think of it, but I'm actually very shy and not very socially comfortable.
So now I don't think that of you. At the time, yes, you seem that way. I believe. Even though you did have like a big smile on your face and
yeah, with situations where like I don't know people, I'm not really that comfortable. But the thing is, and I think this is also one of the reasons why I feel comfortable speaking in the Japanese language and living in Japan, is because having that kind of allows me to not have to worry about what to talk about. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Definitely, I think for shy people, like me too, I'm shy actually, and being the Japanese state of being is sort of naturally, I wouldn't say shy, but sort of reserved, kind of like not in your face, not aggressive, right? And so for shy people to go into that language, to that culture, it's comfortable for us, I think.
And I think especially if you don't look Japanese, but you speak the language and you speak it well, then it's really common to get positive reactions. When
I agree.
Interacting with Japanese people. So
I agree.
I think that's one of the things that like why I always felt so comfortable in that space. Whereas if I'm just in like a non-Japan related, like completely in a space completely unrelated to Japan, like I don't know what to talk about with people.
You get kind of reserved, right?
Yeah, because I feel like I'm kind of outside of like the common the common consciousness that, you know, helps create conversation in those kinds of places. Whereas if it's a Japanese environment, then like I don't really have to worry about initiating the conversation because just the fact that I speak Japanese will be enough.
Boom, right there.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally.
Do you feel like that?
I feel exactly the same. It's sort of a kind of when I'm in like at a party or something like that with like Americans or something like that, I'm kind of like, you know, against the wall. I don't know what to talk about. But then when I see somebody Japanese, it's like, oh snap. We're both shy, but then I know I can get that person to spark up just for the simple fact that I can say like konnichiwa to them, and they would be like, oh shit. So I would seem like kind of like a outgoing celebrity type, just by the virtue of me being able to communicate with them. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally understand. And I think
and I spark up and I go like, oh my god. Yeah, I can be. That's why I think I seem that way to them. They think I'm like the outgoing comedian type. But when I'm with my, you know, my fellow countrymen, I'm not that at all. But when I see a Japanese person, I'm like, I can get to them. I can make them laugh, or I have something to talk about with them. There's like a natural icebreaker. Well, not natural. I guess I fabricated it. But there's an icebreaker because I speak that language. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think probably, like, in that way, both of us have a kind of difficulty in just general social situations. And the Japanese language thing, that skill kind of allows us to have a mechanism for, you know, safety and for, you know, confidence that like we can get through the social interaction.
Ironically, because we're not really social.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like, you know, this is a podcast about Japan, but we are kind of getting into the a topic that like I've been looking into a lot recently with, you know, in terms of like neurotypicality or neurodiversity.
Okay,
and
yeah.
just kind of figuring out like this is the way that my brain functions, and this is why like I feel comfortable in these kinds of situations while I don't in those kinds of situations. And it's really interesting to kind of like finally be figuring that kind of stuff out, although it's kind of off topic, but we got into it now.
It's all about brain stuff, languages and cultures and stuff like that. So I think it fits right in there thematically.
Well, I mean, you know, this first episode is Jiko Shoukai, so it's about us. So that's an important aspect to kind of present, I think, when we are starting out with talking about who we are, right?
Yes, that we're both neurotypical.
Neuroatypical?
Neuroatypical? Is that? I've never said that word out loud, so. Neurotypical? Yes. Okay, well, neuroatypical, whatever. What are we going to call this podcast, by the way? Listeners, we have not figured out the name for this podcast as of yet.
Should we have a temporary name for the first episode and kind of...
Well, I figured we'd just get offline and figure it out, and then by the time I put this out, we would have already found out a name for it.
Hopefully. I was going to call it Japan in general, but I feel like you did not like that. It's a very general I felt it.
Name.
It was very general.
Yeah, it is. It's in the name, and I used to have a blog about Japan, and I called it Japan in general. But it's not like I like loved the name or anything like that. So, if you have any other idea of what to call this thing,
I was supposed to brainstorm.
But by the time we get this out, hopefully I get this out next week. And we have 5 days or whatever to think about it. So we will come up with a name. And I plan on making like a Twitter and like an email and like a Patreon and like.
Awesome.
I got to figure out a way to justify having a Patreon for this, but hopefully I will have thought of it.
Do you know
by the time I make one. But yeah, that's the plan for the show. Is we're just going to talk about Japan stuff because we both have experience living and to a certain extent working in Japan. You more than me. But how long have you been living in Japan?
I've been here for it's going to be 11 years in July.
11 years in this year. Wow. And I myself have lived there for a year in 2017, but I've been there a total of 9 times. Each time like a month at a time, or 3 months at a time, or something like that. So we both collectively have a lot of experience. Again, you more than me.
I actually moved here 5 months after the Tohoku Fukushima earthquake, tsunami and earthquake disaster in 2011.
What month?
I was actually visiting here 2 weeks before it happened.
Oh, wow.
And I went back to the States, and then it happened. And
you just missed it, really?
I just missed it, yeah.
Wow. I mean, I sound excited, but no, I'm not. It's not a good thing. It was a good thing that you got away from it in time.
Oh, yeah. So, like, I don't think anyone's really good with earthquakes, but they really, really scare me.
Oh, really? And I actually, I like earthquakes, actually.
What?
I'm crazy. Yeah, I know. A lot of people think I'm crazy.
You like earthquakes?
I like earthquakes. I mean, they cause death and destruction, like? But it's like being on like a big like ride or something. You know what I mean? I mean, one of these days it's gonna happen and like a big vase falls on my head and kills me, and I will regret this statement. But yeah, whenever they happen, I'm like, yeah, this is cool. Which is
really?
it's not nice to the people who suffer from earthquakes.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we're just talking about the isolated, movement that you're experiencing.
Yeah.
I mean, even that, like, for me, I feel like I'm scared that like the building will fall apart, even though I know that's not a thing that happens.
That's not how it works. Yeah.
It's still like a thought that kind of pops up.
I mean, it has happened actually, hasn't it? Like buildings have fallen apart and like at least chipped away.
But it would have to be.
I don't think they split in half or anything, but
it would have to be a huge earthquake. Like
yeah.
Even I think with the that big one, Tohoku.
Yeah.
I think the more of the damage was from the tsunami rather than like.
Oh, then the actual earthquake.
Apart.
You're
like,
right. You're right. I think you're right.
Like buildings don't crumble, right?
No, they don't.
They might have a crack or like the glass breaks or the wall gets a crack in it. But my image is like demolition building just like crumbling.
There was that movie Earthquake back in the 70s. I think I saw some of it, and then one part like somebody got crushed in like an elevator or something like that, and then for a brief period of time I was afraid of earthquakes. But after that I got over it, and like now I wouldn't say love them. I don't know. Maybe I do love them. I'm crazy. And I'm sorry to anybody who's listening to this who has had, who has suffered at the expense of an earthquake. But yeah, earthquakes happen a lot in Japan, and you've chosen to live in a place where they happen daily, weekly.
Yeah. But I do try to rationally, tell myself that it's actually good that I live in a place that has so many earthquakes, because
you can face your fears.
Well, no. The foundation is built with that in mind, like the foundation of buildings and houses and everything. So the infrastructure is actually really, really good here.
For the most part.
It has to be.
Especially in Tokyo.
Yeah. But yeah, recently we had like a kind of big one.
I heard. Yeah, I remember that a couple weeks ago or something.
6 point something in Tokyo. Even
wow.
That was like, that was scary for me. So I'm glad I wasn't here for the.
I saw the footage. I've heard the
311.
people talk about it. That looked scary. Even though part of me was like, oh, I wish I was. Oh, I'm so nutty. I'm crazy. Why did you choose Tokyo instead of like Kyoto? It seems like Kyoto, and your Japanese has like a Kyoto ben, like tinge to it, right?
Well, so originally, like I started living in Kyoto, right? And then when I was in LA, my roommates were all from the Kansai area.
Gotcha.
So I had more of a Western, Kansai kind of intonation.
Yeah.
But in terms of like work-wise, of course, Tokyo it's much easier to find work.
Yeah.
So that kind of ended up being the deciding factor. I do really like it. It's a fun city to live in.
It's a different vibe to Kyoto, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And much different from LA too.
Oh yeah. Thankfully.
I like the public transportation, and it's safe, and yeah, it's an easy city to live in with peace of mind,
Tokyo gets that bad rep of like, oh, it's so expensive, but I don't think that is the case anymore.
I don't think Californians should talk about.
Oh yeah, I know, especially Californians.
Something
now.
Being right. I think California has way overlapped the expensive-ness.
Yeah, people listening, like, I think that's an old stereotype that Tokyo or Japan is expensive to live in, but I don't think that's. You can find cheap food.
Not anymore.
You can live like 20 minutes outside of the big city and find something.
Yeah.
An apartment that's relatively cheap.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not no. Do not think Japan is expensive. It is fine. You would find good food for reasonable prices.
Yeah, like even the really cheap food is like it's
good.
Not. No, it is good, right? It's not it's not nasty, right? You can find cheap food that's decent level considering the price, right?
Definitely. Especially I'm a konbini guy. So I like to go to konbinis and, you can buy tons of things for very little money.
Okay, so how about next time we do an episode on konbini and
we're going to do episodes on konbinis, on food that is not great and that is great, and we're going to do stuff on like, anime and more tea ceremonies, but mostly anime. No. We'll talk about a variety of things that has to do with Japan, and this will be the hub of Japanese topics.
That's right.
All right, we got to our first podcast. We're going to get an email soon, and then people can like write in and like ask us questions and stuff like that. And as soon as we get all this stuff set up, I will put it in the show notes, as they say, and we'll get that stuff out to you so you can interact with us, and we can all be all giddy about Japan.
I hope people listen. That would kind of suck if no one listened, right?
Well, the assumption is the first episode will get like 5 downloads, if that, and it'll grow. But temper your expectations. This will get like 2 listens, and the amount of people who get to the end will be even less than that. So, I'm optimistic. Hopefully. Though.
But the important thing is to start, right? Like no one starts with like
1,000 followers there.
Like,
well,
unless
not the underprivileged famous, anyway. Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're good to go. We're going to end it here. My name is Kiyoshi.
Sounds good. And my name is Roza. We'll see you guys next time.
We'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.